Hi everyone and welcome to the TechNet Show. We are going to be covering a few topics today. Some of them are weirder than others, so I hope you guys enjoy it. So for our first news, we have some more trouble from the RIAA in Twitch, unfortunately. So the issue is that the RIAA is trying to bring the hammer down on streamers that are trying to stream copyrighted music. I mean, at first glance, it might seem like these people shouldn't even be using copyrighted music to begin with. And that is true. Copyrighted music is copyrighted, and because of that, well, there's limited use cases for it. That is me stating the obvious. However, there's also the question of what do you do about it at that point? So YouTube has a monetization system in which it tells you, hey, there's copyrighted content in this. Because there's copyrighted content in this, we are going to be sending your monetization to this said company. Twitch doesn't have something like this, and I'm not completely sure at how fair it would be if Twitch added something like that in. An extreme example would be, what if you stream for a very long time and you just had some bad luck of some guy playing really loud music in the background for just, like a few seconds, like 30 seconds or so. Because of that, you lose the money on your stream. So there's these weird, I don't completely understand how you would fix an issue like this. But moving back to our actual topic of the RIAA and what they're saying to Twitch, one of the things that the RIAA has an issue with Twitch is that they are using the soundtrack tool. So the soundtrack tool is trying to remove music from clips. It's designed to help creators to not need to be infringing on other people's copyright. And apparently that's what the RIAA doesn't like, which is weird because it's trying to take out copyrighted music out of the said streams. Weird. Any thoughts, Jared?
Yeah, on the one hand, it does make a lot of sense. Like for any other streams who are probably just, blast, the only thing they do is blast copyright content. Kind of like how there's certain YouTube videos that are just directly trying to, take the copyright music and whatnot, just kind of reposting it to their channel or reposting it to their stream. In Twitch case, yeah, I mean, that's direct infringement on copyright, and that makes sense. But the RIAA does kind of take it a good couple steps too far a lot, when it comes to their copyright hammering, their copyright takedowns. Yeah, to even target the tool that helps remove or helps take all that kind of music is a little bit counterproductive.
It's pretty counterproductive. And the RIAA has also been making more moves, not just against Twitch, but also against Github. You want to take that one, Jared?
Oh, yes. So some of you have probably never heard of GitHub, but for those of you who do know of GitHub are probably wondering, how in the world does the RIAA able to put a copyright law on GitHub? I mean, it's just a source. It's just a source of repositories, just a source for code and projects. What could be the big thing? Well, right now, the RIAA is facing a copyright takedown notice against a particular project in GitHub known as YouTube DL. Essentially, it's a way to download and archive certain clips from YouTube and whatnot, which, to be fair, in certain cases could be used to, as the article from Ars Technica puts it, less than lawfully obtain some music tracks. There are some still legitimate uses for YouTube DL in which people like activists, historians, and content creators, but use that tool in order to provide some archive footage and whatnot, to provide extra B-roll for content. Arguably, right now
we rely on stuff like that.
Was it?
We rely on stuff like that from time to time.
Yeah, kind of heavily. Or, yeah, from time to time. It comes up. It's kind of an important thing. So, yeah, after this takedown, which notably the RIA particularly filed this under it looked like Section 1201 of the DMCA, which creating any kind of run around a technological measure that effectively controls access to a work or a DRM would be considered unlawful, at least as of right now under that section. Although it is worth noting that that particular section gets reviewed every 3 years, so maybe the list might get updated later. But nonetheless, because of that, Microsoft and by extension GitHub has essentially canceled access to the repository for YouTube DL. This has not sat well with probably a lot of people, but one notable one is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or the EFF, or the F, which filed a lawsuit counteracting and has effectively called the RIAA's notice through a tweet no less disappointing and counterproductive move.
So the EFF, they're actually an organization. You might have heard of some plugins on your browser called HTTPS Everywhere and Privacy Badger. Those two privacy-focused plugins are from the EFF. So the EFF is an organization that's really trying to fight for internet privacy, fairness, and all that stuff.
It's never really a good sign if you're kind of on the opposing end of that kind of organization. I feel like.
Let's move on from this topic. Let's go into something a bit more, well, it's tragic, but funny at the same time. I think it's funny. I don't know if you guys thought it was funny. So how many of you are T-Mobile? I use T-Mobile. And if you're from a different country, T-Mobile is a telecom company inside of the United States, a cellular company, I'm sorry. Many of you have experienced an outage from T-Mobile a few months ago, and the FCC has finally finished their investigation of it. So what I find funny is a quote inside of it. This is also from Ars Technica. So the quote was, T-Mobile engineers almost immediately recognized that they have misdiagnosed the problem. However, they were unable to resolve the issue by restoring the link because the network management tools required to do so remotely relied on the same path they just disabled. How do you do something like that? How do you block access to yourself? I don't know. I don't want to know. Come on, guys. Do better.
Oof. That's a big oof.
That is a massive oof. Well, that was a very short story. I had a good laugh at it earlier.
Yeah, the moment has passed. It's been a few months. We can all take the moment and laugh, except for those poor T-Mobile engineers. They probably had some repercussions if they're still there.
So why don't you take the next story?
Moving away from outages, which is a pretty tragic thing, to data leaks, which is
still pretty tragic.
Yeah, pretty tragic thing. So a recent study was taken, as Ars Technica reported on it, related to what happens when, messages that get shared include like a link preview, if you include a link in your text. Like certain examples is if you've ever posted a link onto like Twitter and stuff like that, usually on like underneath it kind of gives at the very least like title and whatnot, as well as a bit of like information in regards to either the article you're about to pull up or like the YouTube video you're going to watch and all that. Well, in certain cases that kind of leaves a couple of open doors available, either for, in certain cases, of data being leaked out, to opportunities for malware to be downloaded and whatnot. Yeah, essentially a study has been taken to kind of see who are some of the big offenders and who are some of the companies that, are relatively safe for the most part. And then obviously surprising and in no way predictable note, some of the bigger offenders were from Facebook Messenger and Instagram in categories of unauthorized copies of private information. So, for those who take as much of the data from the link they gathered in order to make that preview.
Ironic thing about this one is that WhatsApp passed with flying colors.
Yeah. WhatsApp, throughout the entire thing, actually came out green and actually has no copies from, or no unauthorized no unauthorized companies, no unauthorized copies of private information. Instagram and Facebook Messenger, on the other hand, have gone the exact opposite spectrum and pretty much will download it all. They pretty much no holds bar, download it all. Kind of wild to think about. Meanwhile, in other, at least in this category, some other noteworthy ones is that Slack and LinkedIn, interestingly enough, do have some of the larger numbers with up to 50 megabytes. And otherwise, some other notable ones. Discord does 15 megabytes. Line, Google Hangouts does 20. And Twitter does 25. Very interesting number. And Zoom does 30. That's something to think about. Otherwise, Instagram and Facebook Messenger, as well as LinkedIn. Again, really coming down on LinkedIn, surprisingly. Also allow servers to download, I guess, getting servers to download large amounts of data. And all three of these, once again, actually are running potentially malicious code on link preview servers. So yeah, I can see Facebook Messenger and Instagram, but LinkedIn has surprised me through and through. I don't know.
I mean, there are some this also tells us which ones are the most secure, seeing the fact that they passed with pretty good colors, which is iMessage,
green
Signal, which is those two aren't that surprising, honestly. I have no idea what Threema was, and WhatsApp. Okay, I find WhatsApp very weird because it's a Facebook company.
Yeah, considering how well they've done with the other ones, it's surprising that they've had one that passed with flying colors.
I guess Facebook needs a good side, right?
Also noteworthy that TikTok may not have end-to-end encryption, but it passed in flying colors in the other respects.
It's really weird seeing the fact that everyone's been so hard on TikTok lately.
Yeah, they're really coming down on TikTok.
Honestly, it's one of those things where I think that people need to look at like Instagram, Facebook. What are they doing? And what are they doing to protect our privacy? Well, of course, your privacy as a viewer and, well, also Google's. Yeah, we're on YouTube, but they do have a lot of information on each one of us.
Everyone's gathering as much information as they can in any way they can.
When it comes down to it, there are private options out there. Just not the most common ones. Well, I guess in the United States, iMessage is pretty common. Anyway, moving on. If you guys have been following TechNet Show or following Apple or Epic or whatever, you guys would know about the Epic versus Apple scenario when it comes to their App Store policies. So Apple recently said that Epic was basically stealing from Apple because they didn't pay their fees. But Epic turns around and they quoted saying, Epic said that its actions are a far cry from tortious, even purposely critical on that Apple's opposition depicts. Simply put, Epic did not steal anything that belonged to Apple. They also said that, and did not interfere with any prospective economic advantage Apple sought to gain from Fortnite users, separate and apart from their interests in Fortnite. Okay, I do not like this at all. So this entire thing is starting to get bigger and bigger. It's because a lot of developers are joining in and showing the community, hey, Apple might not be as good as people might believe them to be. They're taking a huge amount of developers' profits. Honestly, they're not doing that much for the developers. The argument is that Apple is giving the developers a platform to be on, which is true. And Apple did grow this platform to a very large platform. Obviously, seeing the fact that iPhone has more than 50% of the US market share. But is it really worth 30% of your entire profits made on the App Store? And then there's an aspect of price fixing. Is it okay for Apple to put inside of their developer contract that you need to keep your prices the same as other app stores? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I think that Apple needs to figure these things out. Any thoughts, Jared?
Pretty much in agreement on that one. Yeah, while we may have been just willing to, I guess, take it for some time, it is worth finally looking at it, even though, yeah, Apple does provide a large platform to, be able to grow your business and whatnot, or to really try and make it in the mobile app market world. Yeah, is it worth that 30%? And yeah, is it really worth having my price fixed, even though I may be losing out in the long run?
Anyway, I guess we should start moving on to our next topic. Jared, why don't you take that one?
All right. So next up, moving away from the Apple side of things and their whole debacle, we get some good news coming from the Android side in the form of 2 new OnePlus phones in their Nord line. Biggest benefit of this, well, at least for us here in the good old US of A and Canada, the budget devices will be coming out both in Europe, and we'll have a later release in North America. We have access to Nord in any event. What are these new phones? They're the Nord N10 5G and the N100. So the N10 5G is, I guess, the more closer successor, or I guess closer relative to the current Nord. It's currently priced at £329 or around $430. It comes with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 690 chipset with 6 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Not as powerful as the Snapdragon 765. Does benefit in being Qualcomm's most affordable sub 6 5G capable chipset, at least worded by Engadget. The phone itself would also come with a 6.49-inch Full HD screen with 90 hertz refresh rate. Can't argue with that. They also come with apparently, as they word it, a quartet of rear cameras.
I'm actually very excited for cheap phones. I'm a fan of cheap phones. So back when the OnePlus used to be very cheap, I was excited for each one to release. But now OnePlus has gotten pretty expensive, so the Nord line is bringing that old OnePlus back to the new one. They have been making some pretty great stuff. Even though it's not using the best chipsets out there, the fact that they're making it for cheap and probably pretty much usable for the average person, I'm actually very excited to see what these phones do. I'm excited to actually see them. I'm excited to hopefully maybe one day get my hands on them. I don't know, depending on if we actually get subscribers. I hope that we get subscribers. Subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe. We're begging you to subscribe.
Okay, calm down. We don't need to be that. I mean, I'd like for you guys to subscribe, but I mean, but yeah, at the very least, if we're not able to get ourselves the Nord 10 5G, we can always opt for their even cheaper budget N100. It is running an HD Plus display, and it does pack a whopping 5,000 milliamp hour battery.
I actually don't mind HD screens on phones. What about you?
Oh yeah, arguably I'm perfectly fine with just the standard HD, or I guess in this case technically an HD Plus display. I mean, I'm sure there's certain use cases that's really good for having a more higher quality screen. Density. Yeah, but I think since screens tend to be on the smaller form factor anyway, I'm assuming the difference is like negligible at best.
I really can't tell the difference between like 1080 and 4K screens. I mean, there's a very slight difference, but I can't figure it out. It's not worth the extra price in my opinion.
One thing you might feel a little bit though is the internals, which comes with Qualcomm's relatively new Snapdragon 460 chipset, as well as 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage. But on the plus side, it does take micro SD cards, so it is expandable.
That's a good thing. I miss micro SD cards.
Yeah, those are very valuable. I like them. They helped me out in my old Voyage and Trainer days, which is still technically happening today. So, if you want to subscribe to that, that's a thing too. Shameless plug.
Oh yeah, and while you're plugging that, subscribe to Quick Start Gaming.
Oh yeah, we'll throw it in there too.
Please.
It's got some good stuff. It's got Halo. It's got like an episode of Minecraft.
Anyway, let's move on to our next topic, unless there's another phone.
Oh no, that's everything coming from OnePlus. But I do feel the fact that we just announced Halo and everything is a nice transition to. So we are back at it again with Microsoft. More Microsoft news. This time related to the Xbox. We're actually not talking about Halo this time around, but Phil Spencer has been in talks about, the future of Xbox and all of that. And there are some key points to take away from that. One thing they're looking at is to make E-rated games a much I guess, higher priority. It is worth noting that Microsoft already has Minecraft, which is one of, if not biggest, or one of the biggest E-rated games to ever exist. But it does look like they do want to, dive a bit more into that. Honestly, I don't see it as a problem. It's gonna be a nice thing, I think. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for them to actually focus on E-rated games, because a lot of the games for Xbox are your Call of Duties, your Halo,
Gears.
your Gears, and they're all M-rated games. I mean, they're great. I love those games, but the Xbox has never been a family-oriented console. And looking at where Microsoft is moving forward, I think that Microsoft wants this console to be the console for everybody. Which means that they need to take on Nintendo. You can't take on Nintendo unless you have family-friendly games.
A little bit hard.
If they focus on this, maybe they might be able to get Nintendo to move forward or innovate a bit more. Because I don't think that they've really had competition in that range before.
They're off doing... Nintendo does what Nintendo does. I feel like they just kind of like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. I mean, some things stick. Don't get me wrong. They stick hard. But at least I guess on hardware side, I guess software side.
For software, they have a tried and true design. You have your Marios, you have your Legend of Zelda, you have your Animal Crossing. Do you know what all those games have in common?
They're all featured on
good for the entire family. I mean, they're massive games. And I think that Microsoft just wants a small piece of that. And maybe not just a small piece, but they might want to take it over.
I wouldn't mind seeing that. Speaking of E for everyone, one E that's not for everyone are exclusives. I guess some exclusives are E for everyone, but in any event,
You mean like all of Nintendo's games?
Yeah, pretty much. So I guess one thing that it does kind of feel like the console wars have kind of brought up is like, oh, I want to get this because this has this, and this game specifically. Well, I want to get this one because it has this, and this specifically. Like, as we mentioned, Nintendo has its Marios and its Legend of Zeldas. I know PlayStation's been rocking it with Last of Us, God of War, Spider-Man's. Yeah, they're definitely counting on Spider-Man. And then for a while, Xbox had... its fair share. It's had Halo, it's had Gears, but yeah, it does sound like they are trying to kind of move away from being like, oh, buy this console because we have this exclusive. They just want to be able to, any games that they have, you want to be able to play anywhere. If you want to play it on your Xbox, sure, go for it. I'm sure you'll have a great experience. You want to play it on your PC, go for it. They are also trying to push Xbox cloud gaming. I respect this move as well. Trying to less focus on having everyone needing to buy a certain console because, I really want to play Spider-Man, but I don't have a PlayStation. Or, I don't know, everyone kept talking about Animal Crossing back in March, but I don't have a Switch kind of thing. Like, they're just willing to, if you want to buy our console, that's cool. Sure, games are probably, I think if I've seen correctly, they're actually really well optimized for Xbox, like really, really well optimized. I could be wrong. This is all alleged. Yeah, it feels like they're trying to stray away from having games be the crutch for their Xbox and just release their games wherever you want to play it is wherever you can get it.
I mean, it's pretty exciting. Microsoft is trying to make a very consumer-friendly move, which is weird for Microsoft. Microsoft being the same company that tried to force Edge down your throat. I mean, they're still trying to force Edge down your throats, but now they're trying to force Chrome Edge down your throat. It's completely different now. This is not the old Microsoft. And I feel like the reason why they purchased these companies, like ZeniMax, which, owns Bethesda, is just to make sure that all the games end up on Game Pass, which is a very exciting aspect.
I guess some other key points to get through on what Phil Spencer was talking about in the future of Xbox. He is willing to adopt the fact that games choose to monetize in a variety of different ways. We've got battle passes, games like Fortnite and whatnot. Got DLCs, everyone's favorite microtransactions. Yay. But yeah, ultimately recognizes that video game companies need to make money somehow, and one way one particular business model may work great for, one particular company and one particular game, but then you go to another one and it just doesn't, work out that way. So, he's willing to accept that multiple different business practices. I guess it sounds like he's cool with it. Single player games is still important. I respect that heavily.
Yeah, I really respect that one. So this actually brings a parallel with Sony. So Sony is a very single player based system. Starting from the PlayStation 3, remember when the Xbox 360 versus the PS3 was a thing? Mm-hmm. Xbox was really heavily focused into multiplayer. Back then, PS3 multiplayer was nearly non-existent. I mean, it existed, it was pretty bad, and it was down for months. Yeah. That was a very, very bad time. Starting from back then, Xbox has always had the advantage of multiplayer. But Sony, being Sony, realized that, and they decided to, okay, we're going to focus on the single-player experience. And they have made some very good single-player experiences. Look at The Last of Us, Uncharted, look at Spider-Man. They're all amazing franchises that Sony really pushed. They also have, most of the anime games like Persona. Xbox, Microsoft looking at pushing single-player games forward is very exciting because that's where they really started to lack. You had games, massive games, good games, like Halo, like COD, and other games, but most of them are multiplayer focused. There's not really any good games. Well, there are good games that are single player focused, don't get me wrong. I mean, but there's not many of them. And I think that Microsoft putting a focus on this is really going to push that community forward.
It's going to be exciting to see what comes up. I don't need to rely on friends. No, I'm kidding. So I guess another thing is, Phil Spencer wants to be a bit more friendly or a bit more sharing with, their rival companies, Nintendo and Sony. He's talking about, he's already expanding Xbox Game Pass through like projects like xCloud and whatnot. And of course, you can play games through Game Pass on PC. But, he's in talks of like, wouldn't it be cool if like you could get Xbox Game Pass off of your like Switch, or you can just play it off your PlayStation? It's just like, and honestly, a wild thing to think about.
I mean, it's still very unlikely. Just throwing that one out there, it's still very unlikely that this is going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Sony, this is a cash cow for them. They want to milk this for as much as they can. And Nintendo, their entire revenue comes from this. They are not going to mess this thing up.
Think of the possibility. Anyway. Unlikely, but hey, dream big, Phil Spencer. And it sounds like they're working on some projects over in, their secretive Santa Monica studio, The Initiative.
Yeah, Microsoft and Xbox are really making some pretty big things. I mean, seeing the fact that last episode was all about Microsoft, this episode, well, there's a good amount of Microsoft information in it. Microsoft's doing a lot.
Yeah. They're really pushing forward near the end of 2020.
And let's talk about another behemoth of a company. If you are a pro audio person, if you know anything about professional audio, you know of the company called Shure.
Sure.
And if you haven't, you now know about it. Shure makes, bar none, the best microphones, the best wireless receivers for microphones. They're industry standard. You will not go into a studio without at least seeing a single Shure microphone. You might see Electro-Voice. I mean, a lot of studios use Electro-Voice because they're a competitor. But normally, even those studios would at least have an SM58 on hand, which is, well, for you non-professional audio people, is that mic that you see on every single stage whenever they're performing. So they actually made a new mic called the MV7. It releases today. At first, I was like, why would I want to have a replacement for this SM7B? An SM7B is the mic that they have in almost every recording studio out there. The Michael Jackson song Thriller was recorded on an SM7, one of the predecessors of the SM7B. And that is the legacy of the SM7. So when they're like, we have this new cheap version of it, well, not version of it, but something similar to it. I was like, it's $250 for something that has a USB interface with XLR out. I mean, how will it compete with something that costs $400 and is straight XLR, and you need to have like the most powerful preamp in the world? Well, what a preamp is, just for you pro audio people, is basically something that makes a soft signal louder. Yeah, it requires a lot of equipment. So my first thought was, how is this any good? But then I heard it, and I fell in love with the noise. It's beautiful. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's beautiful. And yeah, it has a USB interface on it, so you can connect it directly into your computer. It has an app that allows you to set what mode you want it in. You have your straight mode, meaning that it's what the natural sound of the microphone will go straight through. And you have the dark mode. The dark mode, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. It's so smooth. You hear that bass inside of your voice. I'm probably boring most of you, so I guess I'm just going to say I'm going to get this mic, no doubt about it, and I can't wait to start using it. So, yeah. Any final words, Jared?
Apologies. I am of the group that's unfamiliar with a lot of audio stuff, but I'm definitely curious to... it does seem like a very promising mic, and yeah, I'm excited to hear how it sounds, because it sounds like it's pretty much already in your card already, so I'm probably definitely going to hear how that goes.
I'm actually really excited about this price. This is a very cheap mic for what it is. But anyway, speaking of cheap, I guess it's time to cheap out on our memory cards, because our memory cards are probably almost full. So I guess we'll see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell, and we will see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.
See ya.